Okay, welcome to the How To and Two podcast. I'm your host, Jesse, and I'm super excited today to be talking to Quincy Steiner. Quincy and I are good friends, but really what I want to do is get him on the show today in order to talk about his new business, the SurvivALL Guide. And it's something I've really been focusing on lately here in the last couple months. And so it's more or less more just a binge for me to learn a bit more from someone that's highly experienced in this. So welcome, Quincy. Thanks so much for jumping on, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Very cool. Well, so tell me a little bit about why you started the SurvivALL Guide and what kind of led you to this point.
Yeah, so I'm first of all, I'm 26, so I'm a young guy. But growing up, I always went on scout camps, different types of camps, that type of stuff. And I always like to challenge and push myself on those types of things to see, what new skills I could learn. I was always huge into survival TV shows. Bear Grylls is my favorite. I know people don't like him, but he's one of my favorites, tips and trick wise. And so I had my first son about 18 months ago, and that's kind of when it clicked in for me. When I had him and I held him for that first time, I didn't quite understand up until that point what like security meant. Like I knew my parents were always trying to, protect me, keep me safe, that kind of thing. And I always tried to do that with my wife and stuff like that. But I never realized until I had my son what like really taking care of somebody meant. And ever since then, I've just been working to kind of come out with the best, um, even product, but also just skills and things that I can use, that anybody can use to protect their families and themselves in any situation. So when it comes down to it, that's really why I started it, was so that people can learn how to protect their families.
That's super cool. So like I have gotten really into like prepping, right? Either for natural disaster or survival. It happened during COVID, in fact, when like everything was shut down. We had no food. And something here
Yeah.
specific to Utah is like make sure you have your food storage. Well, I heard that for years, ignored it, right? Found out that there was no medicine and our daughter had a fever. So it was like, oh crap, we are screwed. And then we're
Yeah.
out in Nashville during the tornado and then came to Utah and we're here during the earthquake. And so it was just like 2020 brought us a lot of
Yeah.
crazy. So this is something that's really interesting to me right now and something I've been focusing on getting, like our generator and our 72-hour kits, and then most importantly, food and medicine. Those were the two things that I just, must have needs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
awesome. So what, in your case, like you're doing these 72-hour kits, and what are some of the things that are included in your 72-hour kit?
Yeah. So the interesting part about my kit, if and I've done extensive research on myself on other 72-hour kits, learning what people are putting in their 72-hour kits and stuff like that. I kind of have a weird philosophy. This may hurt me, but um, my one of my philosophies is, and I'm not saying that food isn't like super important, because it is, to keep energy and even morale up in an emergency situation, but I don't actually include food in my kit. If you look at, and here's why, if you look at a typical 72-hour kit and they're charging, $200, half of that is food and water. And to be honest, yeah, that, like I say, that stuff is super key, but there are multiple ways to get food and water in emergencies. Now, water's a little bit more important. So the kind of the goal of the kit is to survive all. So there's so many scenarios, whether you're in the wilderness, whether you're in an urban environment, a natural disaster. My kit should help people be able to get food or water if there was none available. Now, what I tell people when I send the kit is that they still need to put food and water in, but also people have there's so many dietary restrictions nowadays, allergies, um, even just food lifestyles that can, you know, I don't want to send somebody a product that they can't use because they're going to get sick if they use it and then it causes a problem. So some of the things that are in my kit are just, I have this 47 in one kit. I love this thing. It's got like a knife, a flashlight. It's got a little med kit. Um, even uh, what are called bellows. I don't know if you know what those are, but um, it's basically just a long tube. I should have brought it, but it's a long tube and you blow on it and it concentrates your air flow and it helps actually, you can start a fire off of coals from like the night before because it just concentrates the air and helps the oxygen spark up the coals and stuff like that. And so that's probably my favorite feature in it. We also have things like work gloves. We have a dry bag, and that's crucial for putting like clothes in, your phone in, anything that can't get wet. Yesterday on my Instagram story, I put a bunch of like documents that are good to have copies of and laminated if you can, IDs and stuff like that. So that's perfect to throw in there so they don't get wet. Those are some of the basics in there. There's a lot of different things, and I want to go a lot of different directions with it in terms of like add-ons in the future. So right now I'm working on a winter kit for people that go through winter, in case they got, even if the AC went out, this type of stuff could help. Or not the AC, sorry, the heat went out in your house in the middle of the night and it wasn't going to come back on. There's even a couple of things in there that could help with that type of a thing. So that's kind of the direction that I'm headed with this. But in terms of the basic 72-hour kit, in my opinion, it should, handle almost any type of scenario.
That's awesome. And so obviously putting together a 72-hour kit, most people can do that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
cost wise, like what, I mean, is it less expensive to buy a pre-existing kit? Is it more? Obviously, like if you go buy a cheap kit, you're going to get cheap stuff, right?
Yeah. So, so, um, I had an interesting conversation. My wife had an interesting conversation with her cousin who lives down in Arizona, and she had texted my wife because I had started the SurvivALL guide, and she just was kind of asking questions about the kit and stuff like that. And she made the comment like it's such a pain in the butt to like go to the store and remember to pick up, a flashlight for 6 people or 4 people, however many, and you kind of just piece it together. And yeah, you can do that, but it's so time consuming. And then what happens if you don't put something that you actually need in there, that type of a thing? And yeah, you absolutely get what you pay for, 100%. And you know, I've done tons of searching, and I haven't brought this up yet, but I actually took everything in the 72-hour kit that I have in there up into the Uinta Mountains here in Utah, and I didn't take food or water. Um, and I went out. I had a couple buddies that were kind of support for me just in case something happened. And I went out there and I built a shelter from scratch. I got water. I had to boil it, and I have a water filter that's in the kit that I used. Um, started all those different things, and so I've gone out and tested and made sure the quality's there. That the stuff doesn't just fall apart. And even I added a few things in there that I didn't have, like work gloves. I didn't have those, and my hands were just shredded up. And luckily, my dad actually came and met us up there. He just wanted to come meet us up, and he had a pair of work gloves, and he let me use them. And I was like, that is 100% an instant. I need to put that in there, because your hands can just get chopped up so easy that way. So um, to go back to your question, yeah, you absolutely get what you pay for. So
I found too, like, because I've been starting my own, like, just food storage and kits in general. But what I found was work gloves was one of those things that you definitely need. But honestly,
Oh yeah.
like what I like about your product, of course, is the fact that you've gone out and tried it, and you've put yourself in the situation. And a lot of times you can go online and just see, oh, hey, 72-hour kit, and it's just Band-Aids and, like little alcohol wipes, things like that for cuts and scrapes. But I mean, that's not basic survival. That's just medication, in my opinion. So I find it
Right.
really cool that, you've gone out there, you've used things, you've got knife, you've got work gloves, like things that go a little bit above and beyond what a typical kit is. I love that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I want to know a little bit more about this journey in the Uinta Mountains. Like, what was it like? Obviously they just dropped you off and you just went for it, right, with a couple buddies. But what was the first thing that you pulled out of your 72-hour kit?
Water.
Okay.
My water filter.
Yeah.
So like I say, I didn't even take like so much as a water bottle with me.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that's in the kit is these, you've probably seen them. They're the disposable plastic ones, but they're like reusable.
Okay.
And so I bought this water filter that actually can screw on to your typical water bottle cap or whatever. And so we went up after work on Friday, and so we didn't get up there, and it was like 6 weeks ago, so it was pretty cold. It was probably, I don't know, 40 degrees or less almost the entire trip.
Yeah.
But we got up there and it was already almost dark, and I wanted to hike pretty far in there because in the Uintas you can kind of just drop camp wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to have this experience of being away from people. But what ended up happening is it just got dark, and we just decided, we got to a lake and we found a nice spot, and we're just like, you know what, let's just stop here.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a nice little spot, and then went and grabbed water from the lake. And I'm pretty like, I don't do germs super well.
Yeah.
Like the thought of lake water, there's like rainbow trout in there pooping and who knows what else.
Yeah.
And it scared me, but man, that was some of the best water I've ever had. I just put it in this little container and I scooped it up and put the filter in, had a drink after. It was about 1.5 miles, and I was hauling probably a 45 pound bag,
Mm-hmm.
because I had a bunch of extra winter gear and stuff like that.
Right.
And then after that, I went in and started a fire. That was the first thing for warmth, obviously. And so my buddies could cook their dinner.
Yeah.
They thought that was really important.
Right.
And then the next thing, I pulled out my shelter. They're called bivvies,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones that I had actually, they're sticky on the sides, and so I was actually able to make like a triangle, almost like a tent. And what I did, because there's bears up there and different things, and so to just protect myself, I actually just got a big rock, stuck it on one end, and then piled a bunch of sticks up, so that it wouldn't be easy for something to crawl in, and even just as a natural barrier.
Right.
And then from there, stuck on another emergency blanket to pad. Now it wasn't, I mean, it's obviously not a pad, but just an extra layer against the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I slept the entire night, and I slept really well. And actually, one of the most interesting things is I don't have this in the standard kit, but in the winter kit that I'm going to be putting out here pretty soon, it's called a hot water bag. And what it does is, you boil water, and you put that boiled water into the bag, and you put it in your sleeping bag, and it actually kind of just heats up the
Awesome.
sleeping bag all night and keeps you really warm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lifesaver. I would say it was easily teens or low 20s for the majority of the night. And I slept like an absolute baby. Funny thing is, my friends actually, they were in a tent. They had all this gear that they weren't hauling, so they got like nicer stuff. And they slept like 2 hours each. And I slept, a solid like 8 hours. And so it was just little things like that like hey, this product is good. This product can be used and it does work and it will keep you, protected and all those types of things. So
That's
that was
awesome.
really, really cool.
That's awesome. I remember I was stuck out and it was really cold, just with a group of people. And long story short, to keep our bags wet, like to keep them warm, we would pee in Gatorade bottles and throw it at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, from my experience, like it worked great, but if that bottle got open for any reason, it was a terrible night for someone. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, like my focus has been lately, it's just like with the economy the way it is, it's a great economy, but we're one earthquake, one natural disaster away from, anything really. And that could be like having your house. When I was in Nashville, homes were completely ripped apart. So having a 72-hour kit, having shelter, obviously really important, but heat was the biggest thing that has been on my mind lately is just, okay, where am I finding my heat source? And so, for you, what are some of the natural heats or things you can do to get heat? Because obviously propane is a heavy, you got to carry the cylinder. You can carry some charcoal, but how do you get heat other than, your typical fire? What would you say?
Yeah. I mean, my go-to on heat, and I know you said what other than fire, but like,
Right.
man, you can almost start a fire in almost any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
One of the kits I'm actually going to come out with, and I don't mean to keep beating a
Oh,
horse about my kits or whatever, but
love it.
I'm actually going to do a fire kit. And my wife is like, why would you do something like this? And the reason is I want to offer different ways to start a fire, because if you can start a fire, almost everything stems off of fire,
Mm-hmm.
from clean water to food that's not going to make you sick to heat and shelter. And so this fire kit will have 4, 5, 6 different ways to start a fire. And the other thing that I'm trying to do, your average everyday person probably doesn't think about this stuff. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints,
Cool.
and they beat, preparedness like a dead horse for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always been on the back of, a lot of people's minds that I'm around, including them. But, if you hop on Twitter or you ask anybody almost, if they have their 72-hour kit or like, what would you do in this scenario? They have no idea. In fact, I posed a question to my Instagram story
Mm-hmm.
a couple weeks ago that was just like, what do you think the most important thing is what is the most important thing in your mind for the kit? I would say 90% of it was food and water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not wrong, but a lot of them added question marks, like they didn't know the answer.
Right.
And so kind of my goal is to help everyday people just with knowing how to do certain things. So when it comes to heat, how to start a fire. Okay, how can you start a fire from last night's fire? In fact, when I was up in the Uintas, my buddy had like matches and all this stuff. He just brought it just in case and
Mm-hmm.
for himself or whatever. And I woke up an hour, 2 hours before they did, because I got a great night's sleep. They didn't, but I went in and I used that bellows that I talked about earlier in the podcast. And, I restarted the fire from the ashes that were
Wow.
in the, from the night before. And it was like in the teens or low 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And there was plenty of hot coals that I could use to restart a fire. And so it's just stuff like that I'm really trying to help people understand. And sorry, I'm kind of going down a tangent here.
You're great.
But what I've noticed in my research of 72-hour kits that are out on the market, in all those websites and even like some of the Instagram pages and stuff, they all post the same stuff. It's all recycled content. And it's all about wilderness, because the wilderness is like aesthetically pleasing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's so cool, you're in the mountains, so let's post a picture of the mountains. I'm not saying that I don't do that kind of stuff,
Right.
but in all reality, and this is one of my biggest points with the SurvivALL guide is, and this isn't talked about very much. It's hard to find stuff on this. Is that in an actual emergency, I would say 75 to 90% of emergencies, you're going to be in an urban environment. You're going to be in an environment where there's people. You're going to be in a neighborhood, you had your earthquake, or your tornado out in Nashville. And did you say that hit your house?
It was 5 blocks away from our place. Yeah.
Okay. But you guys had still, I'm sure you went into some sort of emergency protocol.
Yeah.
And those people that had their houses hit, they probably were hopefully they weren't in their house, and hopefully you got evacuated. But even for you, that devastation reached, I'm sure, to where you were.
Absolutely.
With stores being down, and maybe even people wandering because they had nowhere to go, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say 75 to 90% of emergencies that we're in are not going to be in the wilderness.
Right.
They're right here in your own house. So like you talked about a generator, that type of stuff, super important. Even just the food storage that you have, super important. But kind of one of my biggest points is that it's so important to understand all the different scenarios,
mm-hmm.
and like having a disaster action plan. I have that as a blog post on my website.
Awesome.
And a thing about urban survival. It's just, people don't think like that. They just see the wilderness and they're trained like, oh, Bear Grylls show, oh, all these survival shows are out in the wilderness. They get dropped off, whatever. They survive
mm-hmm.
on the land. But most people are not going to be dealing with that type of stuff. It's going to be in your own house.
Right.
So,
and that's the first thing when we had the earthquake here in Utah. We experienced that. First thing we did is run outside, turn off the gas. And a lot of people don't think about that, right? That kind of stuff's not taught. But turning off the gas, then cutting your water, because the last thing you want is a leak in your house and then a spark to ignite your house. So, things like that really have kind of changed the way that I look at a natural disaster. And what I found is the preparation, like you said. So having that guide is awesome. And you did say those are included in your kits, or it's a blog post, right?
Yeah, it's a blog post. So
cool.
My favorite part about my kit is actually, it's a product that I found on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go get it, or anybody can go get it, but it's called the Tiny Survival Guide.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it a couple years ago when I was just looking for myself. And I ended up buying one for this kit to see like, how's this going to help me in my wilderness journey?
Cool.
Well, what happened was, so when I went on so I took this with me, and it's got like 200, it's just a little fold out pamphlet. Oh, I should have brought it in here too, but little fold out pamphlet. It has just filled with information. It's waterproof, pretty weatherproof.
Oh, awesome.
And so I took it out there, and like, I've known how to build a deadfall before. A deadfall trap, basically, it's a rock, like a heavy rock, and it leans on a stick,
mm-hmm.
and you have some bait underneath, so an animal can come and grab the bait, and then it should trigger the rock falling onto them. And
oh, cool.
That's kind of how you get food.
Right.
So I knew how to do it, but we hiked up to where I wanted to in the morning after we woke up from the first day. We hiked up there, and I hadn't eaten anything. I almost caught a fish with a fishing kit that's actually in the kit, 72-hour kit. So that was really cool. Didn't quite catch it, but so I was getting pretty hungry, and I just decided there's tons of chipmunks. We found a second camp, tons of chipmunks around the camp. And so what I did is I took some nuts from my dad. He had like a trail mix thing.
Yeah.
And I just took some nuts, set it as bait, and it built this deadfall from this thing. And then I decided like, hey, maybe I should try a couple other traps. So I tried a few other traps. I triggered the thing like 4 or 5 times, got it to trigger 4 or 5 times, but didn't catch anything. But it was that was another thing that I made me feel really good about the kit, is that, I'm providing something that has just so much information on it. In a situation, it's literally, you can fit it in your wallet.
Awesome.
And, when you get a 72-hour kit, they just don't include stuff like that. And yet, like, guess what? I pay full price for that thing, and it's still going in the kit because I think it's that important to know a lot of those things in there. And so it's just stuff like that I'm really trying to include in my stuff that sets it apart. And I'm really about the knowledge. Like, honestly, I'm so passionate about it, like, for my own family, and people that I care about.
Right.
That my wife is going to get mad at me for saying this, but like, I don't really care if I sell a billion kits or whatever, For me, I get to go to bed at night knowing that I'm giving people information. In fact, yesterday, on my story, I think I talked about this earlier, but I posted about some things that are important. Hold on one sec. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry. Posted just some information about, like, you should make copies of your social security number. You should make copies of your driver's license, your passport, that type of stuff, in case it is a fire, or, when you get water damage in your house and that stuff gets ruined or whatever. Just making sure you have that stuff so that if you need to go to a hospital, there's some sort of identification. Even stuff like medical allergies. Like, if you're unconscious and you end up in a hospital from an emergency, they're going to give you whatever they think they need. But if you're allergic to something, my wife's allergic to penicillin. They gave her penicillin, she'd blow up like a balloon and who knows what, you know? And so I posted that, and somebody actually came and was like, or DM'd me on Instagram, was like, I don't even know how I liked your page or started following you, but I'm so glad that I did, because I would have never thought of something like that. And it's just stuff like that like, I can go to bed at night knowing that I'm doing something good and I'm helping people, the everyday person, know, what to do in some emergency situations.
That's awesome, man. And that's exactly why we wanted to have you on the show, because I think that having that passionate drive to just say it's not about the money as much as it is just helping people understand. Because that's, once again, I mean, if you can't build a fire, you don't know how, because you're used to turning on your thermostat, or if you don't know how to filter water, you're going to get sick and it's going to cause more issues. So I love it, man. So I'm going to just go over to our theme here. We usually ask a 2-minute question. And so, like, we've kind of covered a ton. And I think what I really want to know in 2 minutes, like, if a natural disaster hit, what's the first thing that you're grabbing and what's the first thing you're doing?
Yeah. First thing I'm grabbing, I don't have this in my kit, but it would be a gun. But
okay, there you go.
One of my guns, but besides that, honestly, just I think the way I've got my kit, luckily, but probably a way to start a fire, because just from my experience, it's just the number one. It's an ends to a mean for everything.
Right.
And the biggest thing that I'm trying to teach people is, and everything, all the content about survival and stuff like that is so recycled, and it's all about this wilderness survival. And I don't hate it, but I hate it because it's just not what's realistic. It's not what's realistic in an emergency. And so what I try to teach is, mentally, an emergency is scary.
Right.
And so learning to just, how to, what's the word I'm trying to use? Just kind of put it all together and be able to say, okay, we're in an emergency situation. I need to be in charge here. What steps need to be taken to make sure I'm safe and I can take care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, so mental toughness, but then on top of that, obviously the physical readiness is important, but then there's creativity, and creativity will take you so far in any survival situation. So I've watched hours and hours and hours and hours of videos and tons of research on tons of stuff. And I genuinely feel like I'm to the point where if I got put in any scenario, I could probably creatively come up with solutions to building fires, getting food, getting water, even protecting my family if I didn't have all my stuff with me. So
Absolutely. I love it. And honestly, like you say, just that confidence, right? In a panic situation, if you have one of your kits, right? We'll throw a plug in there, shameless one. But if you have one of those kits, then you have the confidence that you can get through this, right? Versus not being prepared. You can't guarantee anything, but awesome, man. Well, Instagram, what's your Instagram handle?
It's just at the SurvivALL guide. So SurvivAll guide.
So survive all, right?
Yep, that's concept.
Perfect, man.
Yep.
And then people can buy website, you. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And then the website's just www.thesurvivalguide.com.
Awesome.
And you can get the kits there.
Okay.
And I have a few. I've got a regular kit, and I got a kids kit and a pet kit out right now.
Awesome.
And then sorry, let me just do this real quick. But one of the other things that I decided to do that I've never seen actually in this space is a subscription model. So
cool.
The kits are expensive. Gear's expensive, and I understand that. And I'm to the point where I think it's so important that what I decided to do is actually just do a subscription kit.
Awesome.
And so you can either buy it straight out, or you can break it up 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or 12-month payments. So it makes it smaller the longer you go, and you're still going to get your kit. And so if you take anything away from this conversation, it's just the being prepared is important, because we never know when anything is going to happen,
right? Or
when an emergency is going to happen. I mean, you weren't expecting the tornado that night that it happened, right?
Tornado and earthquake back to back. Earthquake. Yeah.
and you've had it, man. You've had a rough go. But,
yeah, there you go.
That's my main takeaway, is just, figure out what it is. And even if it's not you buying my kit and you're going to do it yourself, just start, like today, yesterday. Right. Like, it's just so important to just start. So
I think one of the biggest regrets is like an insurance policy, right? If you're like, I'm putting this off, I don't want to spend money on this, and then a natural disaster happens and money's irrelevant, then you're going, shoot, dude, what am I thinking? So I get it, man. Well, that is awesome. So the SurvivALLguide.com or at the SurvivALL, they can order kits and, obviously give you a follow, because that'll be awesome as well to learn daily updates and be prepared. But thanks so much for jumping on, Quincy. And
man,
let's get you on here in a year or two and see how business is going.
Okay. Sounds great.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks.